All right. I think we're live here once again. Casual Dude with Nick. We both just saw episode 2 of The Last of Us. Um, I'll pass it right on to you, Nick. What did you think of this episode?
Well, there was a tall task to accomplish here, which was follow up a really excellent pilot episode, and I think that this episode did that. It followed it up really well, and I think it accomplished that task by slowing down and letting us spend some time with these characters. That didn't mean that there was a lack of action. There was certainly decent amount of that too. But we did get a lot of quiet moments. We did get to understand our characters on a deeper level. And we also got a really, really effective flashback sequence to open the episode, which I really liked. So that's what I thought. What did you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt it was just a really solid episode, like a good follow-up. I would say with most TV shows, like I feel the goal was always to have a really strong pilot, and then how do you follow up a pilot? I mean, usually episode 2s don't like top a pilot very often. I mean, I think it's successful if you're at the very least able to just kind of keep that momentum, kind of keep some of those storylines going and some new things. And I think that's what this one really did. And you mentioned the flashback sequence. That was the start of this episode. And I also really liked that. I appreciated that. That was not in the game. So that was a completely, totally new scene and background into the infection, which is something that, I've only played the first game and the DLC. I haven't played the second game. So I don't know if they get more into that. But we really don't know much about how everything started. So it's really nice to get I already have more context from the show than I ever did from the game.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it can be a really effective tool in storytelling to leave something like that a mystery. So it sounds like that's kind of what they did in the game, or at least the first game. But when you're adapting something into a show, you got to give something to both those who maybe didn't play the game, like me, and those who did. And so they're building on this story. They're building this world out more for both game players and those who didn't play the game, and I can certainly appreciate that. I don't think we actually said this last time, or at least I didn't, but I remember thinking like it would be really cool if we consistently got a little flashback sequence to open each episode, since that's the way episode 1 started. It was more of a longer flashback sequence, obviously. And that's what we got again. I don't know if we'll continue to get that, but I kind of hope we do, because there's more that I want to see. I want to see, not only more information on the initial outbreak of the fungus or the virus, but I also want to see the 20 years between when Joel had his whole life fall apart in Texas and how he got to Boston. There's a lot to tell there, I'm sure. How did this falling out with his brother occur? There's a lot to learn. I'm sure we'll learn that through the text of the story, but more flashbacks. I welcome those too.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're onto something. I think it's going to happen. I think the beginning of every episode, maybe not every single episode, but I think every episode just about is going to start with a flashback sequence, whether it's always pre-outbreak or if it's just, a flashback that's kind of during the outbreak. Maybe it's 2006. I think that's the smartest thing to do, because then you don't break the pace, because the pacing, I think this wouldn't work very well if it's like Joel and Ellie are traveling and then it's like Joel sees something and it reminds him and then we flash back to it. I mean, that could be effective. I think there's a lot of shows and movies that do that. But I don't know if that's going to happen. Maybe occasionally like a quick, like little flash to like him with his daughter, but I don't think we're going to get I know you didn't watch Lost, but Lost was like the king of flashbacks and it worked really well there. But I don't think we're going to get 10-minute cuts in an episode to a flashback. I don't think so. And if that happens, I think it will happen if we get a character-centric episode. So next step, I mean, you watched the trailer. Next episode, we're getting Bill, which is Nick Offerman. So I do think that there is a chance that, and I mean, we see it in the trailer for those that, I don't know if anyone watched the preview, but we do see Nick Offerman as Bill pre outbreak. There are some things there that indicate it's pre-outbreak, and that's not seen in the game at all. So that's something that if it's going to be a Bill episode, then maybe that will occur throughout it a little bit. I guess we'll have to say.
Yeah, time will tell. But let's talk a little bit more about that opening because I found it really interesting. So we're in Jakarta, which we heard some chatter about Jakarta on the radio in episode 1. Seems to be ground zero as far as we can tell.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting. It was very kind of understated. It was just like a very academic little escapade that we got from someone who was seemingly an expert, a professor of, I don't know what, epidemiology, something like that. Rhett gets pulled in by the military. They have her look at some samples, and right away some things are amiss, and she points them out. Why am I viewing the sample in this format? We would not normally look at it this way if it was from a human. And they're like, this is from a human. She goes into this environment where we have this dead body on a table, and she's seeing these, what are they even called, that are coming out of the infected's mouths, like these little wispy, I don't even know what to call
them. Fungi strains, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's fungi related, obviously, but it's
but the way
very quickly you could just see it growing slowly, which was very creepy, a very creepy effect.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is just that it all builds very slowly, and it's all approached very analytically and academically, and then suddenly we just get this moment where she just says, "Bomb the city."
Yes.
And it's like it hits so much harder because she doesn't. It's not like some military person saying this who's like gung ho and is wants to use the nuclear option. This is a woman of letters, a woman of academia, and her response is that severe. Bomb everything, bomb everyone. I want to go be with my family. Life as we know it's about to end. And that really hit me hard. I was totally sucked in by that.
Yeah.
I don't know what your feeling was when she said that, but I'm sure it was similar.
Jaw dropping, because I didn't see that coming. I mean, I was kind of like feeling like I knew where it was going to be going, and just kind of get that typical like, we got to find these people or evacuate. Like, I don't know. I just didn't see that coming from her, that character, like you said, an academic, and just shocking. And it makes me like, it's not really worth thinking about, but it's like, were conversations like that. I mean, we're talking about a fictional show, but we obviously lived through a pandemic. I mean, we'll never know the answers to some of these things, but when, it was maybe clear that COVID would be an outbreak in the world, I doubt people suggested something like that, but I don't know. It's hard. It's impossible not to, because as I was watching that, I was kind of thinking like, it was reminding me of COVID a little bit. Couldn't help it. But yeah, that scene was really, really great. And I want more flashback scenes as well. So far, both are very scientist based. Like, we're both getting, because the opening of the first episode, of course, was that panel that was done in the 60s. So I don't know if that's going to continue. I think that would be kind of neat to just keep getting more, like us learning more about the virus, the outbreak, the fungi, because we don't get much of that in the game. So I would like to see that.
Yeah, the more the merrier. You don't want to over explain, but I think these little 10-minute vignettes do the trick.
It's good. Yeah. What did you think about so this episode in the beginning was not really following much of the game, and then I think I texted the group and said buckle up, and that was when they arrived to the hotel. Once they said we're going into the hotel. So that was ripped totally shot for shot from the game. The hotel, the lobby was just like, it's just amazing to see how much like they put into a scene like that, a set. They weren't even there that long in the show. It just made me like really appreciate it, because in the game it really stands out, like that lobby of the hotel. And even in the game, Ellie kind of plays around a little bit with some of the stuff and admires just some of the little things around. And she does do that in the show, which is great. But it very much does play out pretty similarly. I knew we were going to get clickers this episode, And what were your thoughts on these new creatures that we were introduced to, which are infected, that are certainly, I mean, they can take some bullets. These are a
Yeah.
little more reinforced.
Yeah, they were taking slugs to the head. I mean, well, let me ask you a question. So these clickers,
Yes.
are they like a more advanced version of the infected, where they've been infected for a substantial period of time, so they've started to morph?
Yes.
Okay, that was my guess.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, they looked really scary, and I don't know if you caught it in the post episode kind of interviews they were doing with the creator, but he was saying that they brought in one of their prosthetic designer guys that worked on Chernobyl, which is not surprising, because some of the radiation stuff in Chernobyl, when it showed people's bodies after they're exposed to extreme radiation, looked kind of similar to this, and were equally well done and equally scary. But to take it back to the clickers, I mean, they looked really cool. They looked really unique, even in the world of zombies and zombie movies and shows. But I kind of want to take it to that word, zombie.
Sure.
I feel like in our review of episode 1, I was pretty down to say zombie. I feel like after this episode, I'm not. I feel like more now, I'm just like, this is different. Like, this is there's some similarities, sure, to zombie outbreak films, but like, this is kind of its own thing, and I appreciate that. And it just feels a lot more like it feels as connected to our world as a story like this ever could, I suppose. Maybe that's a little bit because of COVID, like you mentioned, but it doesn't feel like a several times removed zombie story. It kind of feels real. And,
right. And if you remember, we talked about when this trailer came out, well, when the first trailer came out for the show, you were referring to it as like, a zombie show. And I was like, yeah, it's not really a zombie show. And you didn't quite understand what I meant. So now, I mean, the fact that you're already kind of feeling that in episode 2 is like, yeah, it's not really, I mean, you could, of course, mention the scene where the whole horde of them are feasting and then they all go, that's zombie-like for sure. But this does not feel, to me, doesn't feel like The Walking Dead. Really.
Yeah. And that some of that dialogue in the show about the connection that they all have, it's like they're like a hive mind almost, and they have this connection through the fungus that's growing in the ground, and that's all very unique to the lore of this show and the game. There's not much in zombie TV or movies that's like that, so it's pretty singular. But I want to talk about the hotel lobby sequence a bit. So last week I harped on this point a lot, so I will spare us and not focus on it too much. But production design, once again, well, I mean, you were just saying it, like, I don't know if that was shot on a soundstage or what, but like, what an undertaking to flood this whole space and make it look old and decrepit, like it's been sitting like this for years. And it just feels so lived in and real and legit. And I was blown away. I was blown away by the cityscape shots of the buildings all blown to hell, leaning against each other. It just felt like I was standing on a bridge looking at a bombed out and depleted Boston. It didn't feel fake at all. It's kind of amazing. And that's all I'll say about it, because I talked about it so much last week. But
yeah, the building leaning, that's a very iconic shot from the game, and that was very much recreated well. And another just shout out to Pedro Pascal as Joel. Like, he is just killing it. I mean, I just love his chemistry and just kind of Ellie doing her little thing in the hotel lobby, and he's just like, you're a weird kid. Like, it's just funny. It's just like, it gives you a little chuckle, because he's just, he don't care. He doesn't have time for this. He's got it. This is his job. And it's, what's great is in the games, and I'll take a step back and just say that all these like little moments that are not in the game, everything feels like they're just filling in the gaps. They're just kind of adding things that you kind of always assumed were there, but we didn't get. Like the conversation that Joel has with Tess about Ellie and not trusting it and just saying like, well, she's going to turn eventually, right? Like, you're going to turn eventually. And then even Tess talking with Ellie and saying like, hey, you still need to be careful. Just because you're immune, doesn't mean like you can't die out here. Just like little things like that. We don't get a lot of that in the game. We really don't get too much of Joel I don't know, like not trusting Ellie. I don't know. It's not that he doesn't trust her in the show, but it's more that he's not quite trusting that for the vaccine and it being a cure as well, and him talking about that. And he's talked about that in the games, but this was like more context and saying like, hey, we've heard that before. And it makes sense. It's been 20 years. Of course, they're going to try to do things that fail.
Yeah.
So that was just great to kind of get more of that world building.
Yeah, and I continue to enjoy his performance, and I think we see some of that binary that we talked about last week, where it's just like we do this to survive, we do this, we die, and so it makes sense that his initial instinct is we got to get rid of this kid, kill this kid. We can't rely on the fact that she's not going to turn. But even through that rough exterior, that cynicism, that attitude, I do feel like with Pascal's performance, and I'm sure this was the case in the game too, we see some of the humanity underneath. I kind of feel like we see him reluctant to, but ultimately caring about this young girl a bit. And I'm sure he probably sees his daughter in her in some ways. But I will also say we got a lot more out of the Tess character,
Yes.
which I am glad we did, because spoilers, we lose her. But she was a little bit of a blank slate to me last week. She had a couple moments that kind of told you some things about her, but this week I feel like we learned a bit more, and we see that she's got that rough exterior like Joel, but I think she, even more than him, has or had some hope within her. And there's that one line where she says, can you not like reject any chance of us winning for once? Like maybe, just maybe, like this girl could be the answer. Look, this is real.
Right.
And it was kind of interesting to see the contrast between them, and her kind of shifting his perspective and his point of view. And then she goes out like a G, which was kind of cool, but sad.
Yeah, she I did appreciate that they really made her more rough around the edges in the show here, because in the game she always felt a little bit underdeveloped to me. And when this is all said and done, we may look back and say, oh yeah, Tess, like she was not in the grand scheme a huge character, but she's an important character because she, now that and maybe it was obvious to viewers, because I even had friends saying like, well, who's this? Everyone always talks about Joel and Ellie. No one talks about Joel, Ellie, and Tess. I think that's a little bit of a giveaway that, this woman's not probably going to make it too far. And I'm kind of glad that they killed her off so early, just to get that out of the way. And she does die early in the game, but didn't see it coming until the last 10 minutes of the episode. Like once they went to the museum, that was when I knew, because that's the building that it occurs in. Like the death is very similar in the game. But I like how she even said to Ellie, like, hey, we're not the good guys here. Like, we're not good people. We're just doing what we need to do. And it just adds layers. Like, we just don't get main characters like this in shows too much. And it just kind of, I was just sitting there like, this is HBO. This is why this is on HBO. I mean, we get shows like this on other networks, but it's true. There's people who don't these characters are not, like Joel can be controversial. There's going to be things he does that people may not be a fan of. You may not be a fan of. I may not be a fan of. But that's what makes him such a great character to begin with.
This is the network of Tony Soprano. They're not afraid to have a morally gray protagonist. So Tess dies in a different manner in the game. You don't have to go deep into it, but
yeah, so slightly different. She is bitten. That whole sequence is the same. The only difference, I believe the difference is that rather than the infected coming in and her sacrificing herself, it's Fedra. So far, we really haven't seen much of Fedra and their presence. So I could be wrong, because it's hard to kind of keep a lot of these like little things in the game accurate, but I'm pretty sure she does not hold off infected running in. I think it was guys with guns, because from what I remember is that Joel and Ellie, you leave the room, you do not see what happens to her, you hear gunshots. And it's one of those things, when I first played the game, I thought, well, I know, when you do that, when you don't see a death, they're probably still alive, right? So I was expecting to still see Tess, because you do not see her die. You kind of just go off, Tess closes the door, and then you hear gunshots, but she does die. You don't see her again. I mean, she's dead. And then this, it kind of shows you. I know it was a little bit different, but it was just kind of neat to get, kind of a tense scene there. And at first, they're just running by her, and you're kind of thinking like, I don't know, I was even thinking like, is it because she's bit? Do they not see her? Is it because she's bit and they don't view her as like we don't need to get her because we've already gotten her?
That she's one of them.
She already one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, that could have been maybe part of it. But very creepy, just the way they did that, and just that walker thing, like the fact of just walking up to him, up to her.
He kissed her basically. It was like a kiss of death.
That was creepy.
But yeah, she goes out like a badass and blows them all to hell. Might as well at that point. You're going to go either way. But I kind of want to take it back to the scene with the clickers in the museum.
Yes.
And everything leading up to that, really. I mean, it was really tense. Anytime you're in the darkness, the way they used, there was very little music, but the little musical tones that they used, and every little noise mattered. All the silence mattered. And then we get that fight sequence in the room in the museum, and obviously, first time I've seen those clickers, and it's kind of an interesting concept. They can hear you, but they can't see you, and you can see why. Their eyes are totally blown out by this fungi.
Yes.
And it reminded me a little bit of the Velociraptor sequence toward the end of Jurassic Park.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
Creeping around the cupboards or the drawers. This was sort of similar. And by the end of it, though, I will say I was kind of thinking to myself, like, what are the odds that none of the three of them would get bit? Well, it turns out two of the three of them did.
Right.
That kind of a comedic moment where Ellie was like, well, if it had to be one of us, right?
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, I guess somebody got bit. And then lo and behold, two of them did.
Yeah, they let them get real close up to that. Like when the first one was jumping on Joel, I'm like, wow, they're, I know he's not going to get bit in this moment, but it was definitely closer than I thought it would be. Kind of just them getting so close to him and the characters. But yeah, I think they did a really good job with that, because the way you go through that sequence in the game as well, you do always have an option to fight or to sneak by enemies. Almost every single group of enemies that you see, or an enemy in the game, you always have an option to fight or sneak. And it is always easier to sneak because ammo and all that is very scarce. You want to save it. You're thinking, well, I'm not going to waste my ammo here. There could be something, fucking crazy coming up. You're always wanting to hoard and save your stuff. So they definitely, kind of made you feel that a little bit. And even just the way they were kind of walking against the wall with the lights, like that is exactly how it is in the game. I thought they'd play a little more with the sound aspect, but maybe they're, we're going to see clickers again. So
sure,
we'll definitely see more. And they're probably the most famous, most iconic enemy in The Last of Us. So we will definitely see more of them.
Yeah, I look forward to that. And so, the episode ultimately ends with Joel and Ellie just sort of vaguely heading toward, I guess, Nick Offerman's character, right? Is the character's name Bill? Is that what you said?
Bill.
Phil?
Bill.
Oh, Bill, I got it right. And then what? Yeah. Bill and someone else.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I don't know like how much I want to say, because it's Bill and Frank.
Okay.
Now, we see Frank in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know if they're going to go for some sort of twist. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll just not say anything about Frank, but I'll say this, in the game, Frank is not a character. Frank is someone you know of, but he is not. You never see or meet Frank. So I don't know what they're going to do with Frank. We'll see if he's going to be with Bill or not.
That's interesting. And is Frank? I don't know if you watched it. Season 1 of White Lotus featured this character, manager. No, I saw him in the trailer, so that's him. So that's Frank and Bill. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm interested in seeing them. I mean, the Nick Offerman character almost seems like Ron Swanson. It fully realized what Ron Swanson would be in an apocalyptic wasteland like this. It was kind of fun to see him just in the trailer alone. But
What's great is he
what,
wasn't the first choice. And I'm glad the first guy who was supposed to play Bill, I didn't know who he was. He had to back out for scheduling, and then it's like we get Nick Offerman, which is just awesome.
heck yeah. So what did you think of, we haven't really talked about Ellie much yet. We certainly got more time with her. We got to see more of her personality. What do you think of her in this episode? You know, what do you think of what we've learned about her in this episode compared to her character from the game? I'd be curious to hear that.
So I think they're doing a really great job with Ellie still.
Mhm.
She's got her sass.
Yeah.
She has her imagination still, as well as like a child. She's 14 or so. Um, she I don't want to say she didn't have like that much to do. I mean, she had a good amount of dialogue and whatnot and working things out. I mean, what I'm excited to see, and as you know, I'm sure you are as well, is her relationship with Joel. It's now that it's just the two of them. That's it. They don't have Tess as not to say she was a mediator, but
Kind of was.
a little bit, yeah. So, yeah, I'm still really happy with Bella Ramsey playing this part. And yeah, I bite my tongue a few times with some of the things. I don't want to say too much, but I really like her character, and I like that she's got that imagination. She also wants to fight. She's like, I got two hands. You gonna give me a gun? And they're both just like, absolutely not. And it makes sense. They don't know who this girl is. She's 14. Like, they have survived this long by not maybe giving guns to kids, right? Like Joel and Tess, they do really feel like experts. And what's great is like there's not really any moments in the episode where you're like, why are they doing this? They should be doing this. And that's such a difficult thing to avoid in shows like this. And I never felt that way. I always felt like, because they just have constantly been saying, like, we know the routes. Hey, we know the fast route. We know the short route. The short route is more dangerous, but and it's just, they've done a really great job of, setting that stage with the characters.
I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think anytime you're watching any kind of a survival based show or movie, or you're playing a game, I mean, your ability to buy into the story totally hinges on the characters making smart decisions.
Yes.
Anytime they're doing something that you would not do because it's so blatantly incorrect or stupid, it completely sucks you out of the story. But in this case, like you said, it's clear that they have a certain level of expertise. They've done this before. They've been out of the quarantine zone into this landscape many times. They know their way around. They know how to deal with these infected, these clickers. But I mean, now they're down to two soldiers. Tess is gone. They're probably gonna I would think, have to put a gun in Ellie's hands at some point. And it's tough. It's tough out there. There's only two of you instead of three. So we'll see if she's forced to do any fighting. You might already know the answer to that, but I'm quite curious. So here's a question. This might be tough to answer without spoiling anything. Is the Ellie character gay?
Do you want to know the answer to that? Are you wondering, asking?
Well,
I have the answer.
Maybe don't answer it, but I'm wondering because there was a moment where Tess says, is there anyone that's going to be coming after you? You got parents, you got a mom, you got a dad, you got a boyfriend. She's like, well, I'm an orphan, and no, like kind of some special attention was paid to that response. So doesn't necessarily matter, but it seems to have been implied that that might be an aspect of who she is, which I don't know if it's interesting, but it's a layer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you will get the answer to that question, because we will certainly have flashbacks with Ellie. We will definitely be getting that.
Good.
Yeah, we will. That's something that was not in the main game. So you have the main game, and then you have DLC, which is called, I think, Left Behind. I know it's been confirmed, and I've also seen in the trailers some footage, and I'm like, oh, they're doing the DLC. And the DLC is like this nice little like 2-hour. Most of it essentially is Ellie, a little bit younger, not younger, but like basically how she got bit. So I think we will be seeing that. Definitely.
She said it was in a mall.
Yes, and that's a whole big. I hope that gets a whole episode.
I don't know if I bought her story. Her story seems flimsy. She's like, I went into this forbidden mall alone. And
Mhm.
Tess kind of like, you got some balls on you, kid. And I'm just like, really? She was alone? But also, I thought in episode 1, there was some dialogue about everyone else that she was with died.
Right. Yeah. You'll see. Time will tell. Time will
Yeah,
tell.
so it would seem that there's a little bit of fibbing going on, which
There is. There is.
when you're on
Little-
the road and trying to survive, I guess you play your cards pretty close to your chest, right? But yeah, I noticed that. I don't
yeah.
know that I have a lot more to say about this episode. It was just kind of really simple and straightforward and effective.
It was. It was. Did they ever say the term clicker? I don't think so, right? You wouldn't have known what that was called. I don't think they said clicker.
They didn't. In the post-episode interviews with the creator, he referred to them as such, but in the episode, no, they never called them that. I'm guessing that's maybe just something the fans call them, or is that something they call them in the
No,
game?
they do. No, they have names for them. And I mean, it's as simple as they kind of click. You hear them kind of clicking as they walk. That's just like the fungi like layers that just kind of crack, and their head kind of like moves around. I'm sure they will call them that, because I bet the next episode I could just see Ellie saying like, "What the hell were those things?"
Yeah.
Clickers.
Yeah,
Call them clickers.
they click. We call them clickers. We're not creative. We don't have time for creativity. They click.
Yeah, but I agree. I don't think there's that much here. I think it was just a solid, second episode. The next one I think is going to be a more, we're getting new characters. It's going to be, a little bit more fruitful, I think, as well. This was a very more standard, kind of straightforward in that journey, but some big moments happen, of course. Yeah, with Tess, dying, fairly early. And whatnot. And I think they also avoided, not that I ever didn't trust it, but I could see so many other, films, TV crews just doing some cheap stuff with the clickers. Because you could have easily just done some like, hey, these things don't see you. They only can like hear you. And they did a very good job, for one, not just doing everything, not, I think we got enough, but I think we'll get more content with them.
Mhm.
But it was just really well shot, really well done. And this, also worth noting, is was directed by Neil Druckmann, creator of the game.
And he has no experience directing any films or television episodes.
First thing, I believe this is the first thing that he has ever directed, other than if you consider a video game directing. But in film and TV, this is the first thing. And I mean, I didn't, the fact that I didn't like notice that, I would have probably assumed he directed the first one, because the first one had more video game like shots, like in the car. To me, that was,
yeah, kind of.
I
mean, that's kind of amazing. Like, you never know with a big high production value TV show like this. Like, a first time director, he may have had a DP that really kind of held his hand through it.
Sure, I'm sure.
But even so, like, it's still, a lot is being asked of you. You're ultimately the director. You still have a big role to play. So for someone who has never done that before, for this to have turned out as great as it did, regardless of whether he did, 80% of the directing or 40% of it, it's still really impressive.
It is. I mean, he has the title as director for this episode. So like you said, whether he was guided through it or whatnot, I mean, he has the credit. So I mean, he was the director for all intents and purposes. And I'm on his Wikipedia, and this is, in film and TV, the first thing he's directed, first thing he's written for film and TV. So he's making a splash, and who knows? I mean, I don't know if this means like, oh, he'll be in film and TV now. I mean, probably not, is my guess. I mean, he's done a few other things. He's appeared. He's had little cameos in a few other like shows and movies. But
what I've consistently read and heard is that the plan is for this show to run 2 seasons, and that's it. They want to tell their story and get out. And
yes.
So, yeah, I mean, you never know. I mean, he's obviously someone who created a video game that is regarded as one of the greatest story-focused video games ever. If he wants to make that transition into film and TV and maybe continue this relationship with HBO, I mean, I'm all for that. Why not?
Yeah, especially if he has a good relationship with Craig. What's the other guy? Craig Mazin. So maybe they'll be like a duo. Maybe.
just keep it up, boys. You know,
Right?
we're coming off of Chernobyl and this. You can't get much better. So I say keep making great TV.
Yeah. But no, I agree with you. I don't think there's anything else to really say. I think we went through pretty much everything. For me, this is a pretty solid. I would probably go an 8 out of 10 for this one. I think, for what it is, I don't think this is meant to be that masterpiece episode. I don't think it's an amazing episode, but I think it's a really solid, stepping stone, leading us into that outside world. We're going to be getting some much deeper conflicts and dialogue and characters in the coming, episodes. And this one certainly is more of a stepping stone episode, and it was very good. It was very, very good. Had some big moments. So it's an 8 for me. I'll let you go with your closing.
Yeah, I think 8.5 feels about right. I mean, it's an episode that set out to do certain things, and it accomplished those things. It expanded on these characters, helped us learn a little bit more about them, taught us more about the outbreak via the flashback, showed us some information on what it's like to survive out in the non-quarantine zone, this broader world where there's danger on every corner. So yeah, I mean, I think it was just a great execution of all of those things, and it got us from A to B, and now we go to C. I would imagine that. How many episodes is the season? 7?
I believe 9.
9.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I would imagine that we're probably going to get a pretty big mid-season episode. I would think that tends to be the way these things are structured. So we're probably building up to some bigger and better things. But for now, I really appreciate episodes like this where it just slows down and lets us kind of live in this universe and get to know these characters. So I really liked it.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. So I think that's it, guys. A little bit shorter than the last one. If anyone is here watching on the replay, in the description, Nick here is going to be starting his own YouTube channel. I have the link to his channel. If you want to go and just give it a sub. He has no videos yet, but they will be coming. And the description has a little bit of what it's going to be like. Going to be rewatching some older movies and kind of discussing how they hold up, and just some individual thoughts and topics on some older films. So stay tuned for that. Give him a sub if you're able to. And I don't know if we have anything else. Any kind of, any other kind of. I think we've talked about everything about the episode, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think there's anything to add. I'm looking forward to next week. We'll be back talking about episode 3, and we'll see what's in store.
All right. We'll see you guys then. Bye. And